out of so um, in Revelation 13:1, as we mentioned before, the blasphemous names on the seven heads. Here, the blasphemous names are over the entire beast. As you can see on the diagram, it's all over the beast. But in Revelation 13:1, it just shows it on the heads. I mean, on the horns. Well, I'm sorry, blasphemy is shown on the heads, but the crowns are on the horns in chapter 13. So the names indicate the character of the beast. The devil being so self-centered and wanting to be like Yah and be the controlling entity on earth, presumes to take the power of the deity on earth. Now remember, we already talked about reasonings why the beast in Revelation 17 is Satan. It's none other but Satan. And we talked about it, and it'll probably come up again. You know, the scriptures, when the whole entire scripture really only talk about seven beasts. You know, the four that we talked about in Daniel chapter 7, verse 3, they came out of the sea, those great beasts that came out of the sea, which was Babylon, Mede, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Then when we go over to chapter 13, we see another beast, a sea beast, that also came out of the people. That made the fifth beast. Then you go to verse 11 in chapter 13, then you see the sixth beast, which is the earth beast. So you had the beast that comes out of water, all the first five, then the sixth beast that come out of the land. That seventh beast, it never gave a name for it. So we went through 16 reasons basically why that is the dragon. And one of the main reasons, and there's a bunch of them though, but one of the main reasons is that when you look at Revelation chapter 12, you see the great red dragon. When you come here in chapter 17, you see the scarlet colored beast, where you know scarlet and red is the same color. And then it identified in chapter 12 that that's the devil. So this scarlet colored beast is the devil. And it wouldn't make any sense for it to be anything other than that, especially some of the thinking that I had years ago with that being, you know, the papacy, and then you have a woman being a church. That didn't really make a lot of sense like that. But now, it's, you know, over time, it makes more sense now that that's Satan, or that's the devil, or the dragon. So I just want to reiterate that again. And using himself, the beast, the apostate system, which is the false prophet, as his threefold union of power. The devil is blasphemous in his fullness, but the papacy and the false prophet is as well. The devil is full of blasphemous names, indicates that it is wholly devoted to this objective of pride, control, and wanting to be like the Most High. Now, you all can write those verses down, Isaiah 14, 13 to 14, and Jeremiah 50, 29 and 31. While these verses primarily reference this literal Babylon, we find mystery Babylon in Revelation 17, led by the devil, has an end time ramifications. So in this verse, again, and right at the end, it brings up the seven heads and the 10 horns. It says the seven heads and the 10 horns. We're going to address those when we get to verse 9 and 12, which I don't think we're going to get to today. We're going to address the seven heads and the 10 horns of who they are when we get to 12. And I've already said the heads, but we're going to go more in details of it. But in the meantime, we need to address some of the important factors that will help lead us into the explanation of the seven heads and the 10 horns. So let's review a few important points with these seven heads and 10 horns. So the identity of the seven heads and the 10 horns are mentioned in the following chapters. Revelation 13, the earth beast. Revelation 15, the number of the name. Revelation 16, the false prophets. Prophet. Revelation 17, the seven heads and the 10 horns, the kings of the earth. 18 that talks about the kings of the earth, 19 the false prophets. But keep in mind, Revelation 14 and 15 mentions the beast and his image as well. But these specific chapters are crucial because to get to a clear picture, we must identify these characters. I sent you, I believe you guys should have got the email I sent you the other day of that one chart. I had some people ask about that. So I sent you that one chart that had the tables on it. Did you all get it?
I have to check and see.
This is this one right here. That one is
Oh, the one you're showing us right now.
That one right there. Did you get that? I sent that to you. I sent it to everybody.
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay. I just want to make sure everybody got it. So that's very important one because it gives us the clue as to what everything is as far as the names, because name changes. The name changes and sometimes as you get from chapter to chapter, but it's still talking about the same entity. So I thought I'd just send that to you the way I see it right now through studying the scriptures. So these specific chapters, as I mentioned, are very crucial. But in these chapters, they are addressed differently, which again can cause confusion if you don't understand which is which. But they are in each. And let us examine for a moment the significant difference between the 7 heads and the 10 horns of Revelation 13 and 17. So we learn from Revelation 13 that the 7 heads, when Eric did the message on that, the 7 heads are from top to bottom, starting with the papacy as the top head. And he is the leader of the Roman Catholic Church. And then is followed by the cardinals, the archbishop, the bishop, the priest, the deacons, and the laity. That's the 7 heads. That's the order from which each one of those, and they had blasphemy all over them. And I didn't put the slide up here, but if you all recall, a lot of them carry different names that are really blasphemous. Like you all know, the Pope calls himself like Holy Father. Some of them call themselves reverends. Some holy reverends and words as you and Father, brethren, reverend. We're not to call anybody brethren on this earth. So it is blasphemous for that to be done. So it makes sense that blasphemy is written all over the heads that's represented on that sea beast in Revelation 13. It makes sense for that. So the Roman Catholic system got its power through the dragon, according to verse 2. Now we had chapter 13. Verse 2, dragging, if you look at the bottom of, if you read the bottom of chapter 13, verse 2, the bottom of it says, and the dragon gave him being the sea beast. Somebody want to say something? Okay. His power and his seat and his great authority. And verse 4 says, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who was like unto the beast? Who was able to make war with him? Who was able to make war with him? Thus the heads are attached to the Roman Catholic Church. However, in Revelation chapter 17, the scarlet colored beast of Revelation 17:3, which is the verse we are on, also have 7 heads and 10 horns, but is not attached to the woman that represents the Roman Catholic Church system, but to the scarlet colored beast, which is the same as the 7 heads and 10 horns of Revelation 12, verse 3, which is attached to the devil, which I mentioned earlier. The great red dragon over there in Revelation 12:3, and here the scarlet colored beast in 17:3. So the meaning of these heads and horns in Revelation 17 cannot be the same as the ones in Revelation 13. So Revelation 16, the dragon is identified in verse 13, and the sea beast of Revelation 13 is the same as the beast in Revelation 16. Then the earth beast of Revelation 13 is the false prophet of Revelation 16. Of Revelation 16, which is the king of the earth and the 10 horns of Revelation 17. So we're just going through some things here. So whether Revelation chapters 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, or 19, these phrases of 7 heads and 10 horns, earth, beast, false prophet, number of his name, or kings of the earth, this represents in a general a state power, a power that according to Revelation 17 is attached to the devil or dragon. Now we know the heads of 13 mentioned is dealing with the church because it's attached to the papacy, the sea beast. But when you start talking about the horns and the earth beast and the false prophets, now you're looking more at state power, power that's according to Revelation 17 with those 10 horns is attached to the devil or the dragon. But it have a woman. There's a woman that is called Mystery Babylon, which is the woman that we're speaking of, or the whore that we're speaking of, or the Mystery Babylon that we're speaking of, is all of the same. And she is sitting on the dragon, on the devil. She's sitting on this scarlet colored beast, which we already identified as the devil. So this woman is initiated based on Daniel 7, way back to Daniel 7, represented a little horn in Daniel 7 to a sea beast in Revelation 13. And we know that from Daniel 7:11, which is a transition verse. Getting us almost like getting us prepared. It's going to be called a beast now, no longer called a little horn. So remember, this little horn spoke great things against the Most High. It blasphemed against Yah in Revelation 17. So in 17, we see that the woman, which is in essence the sea beast of 13, which is the little horn that the kings of the earth, the state, committed fornication with, as well as the people or the inhabitants of the earth, which is verse 2. So this woman is committed fornication with the kings of the earth and the inhabitants. This woman has caused fornication, idolatrous worship, and have made all them to drink of her wine or her false doctrine. The papacy, the woman, will be the driving force to eventually bring the earth into submission of this idolatry and false doctrines, to bring it eventually to the one that gave it the counterfeit power, as mentioned in Revelation 2 and 4, the dragon, Satan, the devil. So even the earth beast of Revelation 13, 11, 12 submit and causes other on the earth to worship the sea beast. Thus, with the 7 heads, 10 horns, and the kings of the earth, we see a political and state power following a woman that is idolatrous and constantly put false doctrines out there. And she is riding on the father of lies, the scarlet colored beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns attached to it, which tells us the devil is the driving force which has been manipulating and using the state to do his bidding even before the existence of the woman or little horn. It was the driving force with Babylon. It was the driving force with the Mede Persian. It was the driving force with Greece. It was even the driving force with pagan Rome before paper Rome came into existence. Satan has always been there to attack everybody. So the papacy would not be held accountable for Babylon because the papacy didn't even exist during Babylon. So that's how another reason that we know those heads can't be heads that's the same as 13, because the papacy didn't even exist prior to even the exaltation of the Roman Empire. So again, that's just another reason why we know that. We're only held accountable with the things that we're responsible for, things that we have done. If I go out and speak in something that's not of the Yah and giving it to other people, I'm going to be held accountable for what I say to them. I'm not going to be held accountable for something somebody said 30 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Everybody's held accountable for themselves, but you are accountable to words that come out of your mouth. And Satan has been a liar and a father ever since the beginning, since the man and the woman. So therefore, it is Satan who has implemented his nature of lying and deception and sin way back dealing with the Babylonian system, those first 4 world rulers. He's the cause of that, where the Catholic Church had nothing to do with that, even though later on they come up out of pagan Rome, which something to talk about later on. So it should be clear in Revelation 13, 1 and 2, and it makes it clear that the 7 heads and the 10 horns attached to the sea beast had both church and state power during this period of dominance during the Dark Ages. So during the 1260-year period of terror against Yah's people and those leaving and not willing to drink the wine, the false doctrines and stuff of her, which is the Catholic system or church, which was the idolatry and the false doctrine. They weren't willing to adhere to that. And every time I read that right there, I think about Revelation chapter 2. No, chapter 2, yeah. Every time I read that, I think about chapter 2, and I look at verse 24. This is during the Thyatira church. You know, one of the things is that this is during the time of the persecution between the 538 to 1798. We went through these churches. There's other purposes. There's other things behind these churches besides just being little churches and getting Ruach meaning out of them. There also was a period of time too as well. And that period of time in the Thyatira church was during that time of persecution of the 5th beast, which is, he wasn't called it, but it was still under the Roman system then, because the 5th beast really not going to become the beast until after he gets his power back. So really he's orchestrating his powers and doing all this stuff while still under the 4th beast power. So here we are in this situation. I'm looking at chapter 2, verse 24. I'm looking at chapter 2, verse 24, and it says, but unto you, I say unto the rest of Thyatira, as many as have not this doctrine, which have not known the depths of Satan. They refuse that. As they speak, I will put upon you none other burden. So many of them back then, many of the people during the Dark Ages, during the time of this persecution, they didn't know anything about the Sabbath. Some of them may have, but they didn't think about it. A lot of them came out of the Catholic Church. A lot of them came out of the Catholic Church. And through Martin Luther, who taught that indulgences was not biblical and not scriptural, the people began to get a little better understanding that the Catholic Church doctrine was messed up. And many of them started to flocking out of it. But when they did that, the Catholic Church not only got upset with Martin Luther, they got upset with those that were leaving the church. And then when they left them, they all then started to call them heretics. it started beginning to call them heretics. And we discussed already what the heretics are according to scripture. So,
Hey, Jim.
yes.
Now that was around the same time too when they was doing the King James version, right?
Yeah. They were, yes. The King James version they started writing it in 1604 in England. 1604, and they didn't finish it until 1611. It took them 7 years. Isn't that interesting? 7 years. It took seven different levels to get to the seventh one that took 7 years. So when I say took the seven levels, that's going back to the other books, you know, the Tyndale, the Geneva, the Bishops, the Coverdale, the Geneva. I know I'm missing one, and I can't remember which one that other one is. And then
Matthew,
right? Matthew, and thank you. And then the KJV. That's 7. So it's seven. It's 7. They use those primarily along with the 5,200 manuscripts that come up with the KJV. So it took 7 to get up to that point. Then it took 7 years for them to finish all 7s.
And, so, that's ain't that the same number where they be talking about they refine gold?
Yes. Yeah. That's one in Psalms 12:6 and 7. That's what you're talking about. It's in Psalms 12:6 and 7.
Yeah. So the scripture is like fine gold.
It's like, yes, it is. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad you remember that. That's good. So what does a false prophet do? Prophesy deceit. If you go to you go to Jeremiah, verse 31. Let's go there first. Somebody read that for me. And somebody read Jeremiah. Somebody also read Jeremiah 14:14.
In Jeremiah 31, what
5:31.
Oh, 5:31. Okay. Jeremiah 5:31. The prophets prophesy falsely, and the priests bear rule by their means. And my people love to have it so. And what will ye do in the end thereof?
And 14:14.
Then Yahuwah said unto me, the prophets prophesy lies in my name. I sent them not, neither have I commanded them, neither spake unto them. They prophesy unto you a false vision and deviation, and a thing of naught, and a deceit of their heart.
Yes, and besides that, we already know we can go to Matthew chapter 24, and Yahushua himself talks about the deception coming in these last days. So the earth beast of Revelation 13:12 engaged, it's 13, 11, and 12, engaged in performing wonders. Well, 12, let me go there for a minute. 13, 11, when it first brings it up, when it first brings up about the earth beast, but 12 talks about another one that talks about how they're going to wind up worshiping them. But anyway, let me read it. So this 13:12 engaged in performing wonders and miracles in the sight of people, and it calls many that would not worship the image of the sea beast, which is the beast of Revelation 16, should be killed, according to verse 15. Verse 15. So continuing on. So the earth beast and the false prophet are both represent the state And the woman in Revelation 17 represents the church. The devil's name is not brought up anywhere in this chapter 17. The sea beast, which is the Roman Catholic system, ruled even in the Dark Ages. But of course, it had heads and horns. History will repeat itself. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Somebody want to read Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 8 and 9. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 8 and 9.
All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing.
Ecclesiastes 1, 8 and 9. I'm sorry, not 8 and 9. I gave you the wrong. Yeah, no, that's right. 8 and 9. No, that's not right. 9 and 10. Sorry, Greg. I gave you the wrong one. 9 and 10.
Okay. The things that have been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new. It hath been already of old time, which was before us.
So there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing new at all. Whatever's been done in the past will be done again. It's going to be done again. And we change, but Yah doesn't change. And we know that, for he said, I am Yah, change not, over there in Malachi 3:6. Neither does his word change. So he has said this in Revelation 17 will happen, it will. So if Revelation 17 is speaking of the things that it's speaking of, dealing with this woman, dealing with this dragon, Satan, dealing with the kings of the earth, dealing with the 10 horns, dealing with the heads, what Yah say is going to happen is going to happen, regardless of what we may think. We can rebuke this, we can go against it, but this is his word. He's saying it's going to happen. And Yah does not mess his words, and his words come true. So I do believe it's going to come into fruition. So when we go to 150, I'm going to read this, Psalm 119, 153 to 160. It says, consider my affliction and deliver me, for I do not forget thy law. Plead my cause and deliver me. Quicken me according to thy word. Salvation is far from the wicked, for they seek not thy statutes. Great are the tender mercies. O Yahuwah, quicken me according to thy judgments. Many are persecutors and my enemies, yet do I not decline from thy testimony. I beheld the transgressors and was grieved because they kept not thy word. Consider how I love thy precepts. Quicken me, O Yahuwah, according to thy loving kindness. The word is true from the beginning, and every one of thy righteous judgment endure forever. That just backs up our king, our genuine great king. And that verse 158 where it says, I beheld the transgressors and was grieved because they kept not thy word. That verse right there is that right now, me personally, that troubles me when I see that. That bothers me when I see certain people doing certain things that I seem like they should know, they would know better to do. Even with myself, do things that I know is right and still do it wrong. You know, it bothers me. Anything that if you do something that's wrong and you know it's wrong and it don't bother you, then something's wrong. Then something is wrong. Sin should bother us. We shouldn't want to sin. So I want to go back to Revelation 13. I want to go back to Revelation 13, verse 1. We'll go back to Revelation 13, verse 1. When it says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his head 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. I mentioned already about these 7 heads. It was mentioned when chapter 13 was done. I thought I didn't have it written down here, but I do have those heads and what they were called. The Pope is called Your Holiness and Most Holy Father. The cardinals are called His Eminence, Your Eminence. The archbishops is called Your Excellency, Excellency. The bishops is called Most Reverend. Priests are called Reverend Father. Deacons are called the Reverend Deacons. And then the laity is just non-ordained members as deacons and priests and bishops. They're just non-ordained members. So this is the hierarchical system. And you heard me talk about hierarchical systems because I would probably say most of the denomination that's part of a denomination have a hierarchical system. Most of them probably do. But the Roman Catholic Church have a hierarchical system. And this structure is often visualized as a pyramid with the Pope at the top and the laity at the base. And that makes kind of sense why they show it like that, only because the head at the top, the Pope, is a point, but at the bottom is the base. That's where more of the people are at. It's in the base, is where the laity is at. So it makes sense they're using that as that symbol. Then Eric had mentioned about the crowns, but I'm going to give you the names of the 10 crowns. So in other words, there was more than just 10 dynasties. These dynasties were the horns. They were the ones that the Roman Catholic Church used as a strong arm. They're the ones that they used to go out and persecute people. A lot of these, the heretics that were killed because they wouldn't bow down. But these are the names of some of these names are interesting. So these are the horns. And what we're talking about, we just gave you the heads of the sea beast in Revelation 13:1. Now I'm going to give you those 10 horns. There was many. Who the horns are the dynasties. There was many dynasties during that time, but there was only 10 that were crowned. And I went and pulled it up online recently, right now. Are there any kings that exist today that are kings? I mean, they got power, but they have no crowns. And yes, they are. You can pull it up online. There are kings today that are called kings that have power but don't have crowns. So back then, there were kings that had power but no crowns. The ones that had the crowns back then, they were considered the emperors or the emperors of the Roman Catholic Church. They were the holy emperors of the Roman, that was they called, the holy emperors of the Roman Catholic Church. Or it wasn't even the Catholic Church, they said the Roman Empire. So there was the holy emperors of the holy Roman empires. That's what they called it back then. So here are the 10. And I give you the year that they pretty much came into it, that they got crowned. These are the years they basically got crowned around this time. One of the dynasties was called Carolingian dynasty. They were crowned around 800 CE, which is, common era thing, or after the death. The Athenian dynasty, it was around 962. All these are after the death. All these are AD. The Salian Frankish dynasty, 1127. The Supplenberger dynasty, 1133. The Hohenstaufen dynasty, 1138. The Welgoth dynasty, 1209. The Luxembourg dynasty, 1308. The Wittenbach dynasty, 1314. The Habsburg dynasty, 1438. And the Habsburg Lorraine dynasty, 1745. These are the only 10 dynasties that I personally saw myself that were crowned. They were crowned as holy Roman, the holy emperors of the Roman Empire. And they actually call it that in their write-up stuff. So like I said, there was other dynasties during the Roman Catholic Church rule time of 538 to 798. But these were the only ones that had kings that were crowned as holy Roman emperors. So here is a write-up of interest coming from the family. The write-up is the family history, posted June 19, 2019. And I just did it on one of these, on the Carolingian dynasty. The Carolingian dynasty was a dynasty out of France. The Carolingian dynasty was a Frankish noble family founded by Charles Martel, with origins in the 7th century AD. The dynasty consolidated its power in the 8th century, becoming a de facto rulers of the Franks. These are kings of other nations as the real powers behind the Merovingian throne. In 751, the Merovingian dynasty, which had ruled the Germanic Franks, was overthrown with the consent of the papacy and the aristocracy, or the higher class these are the higher class aristocrats, the higher class in that society at the time. And a Carolingian guy by the name of Pepin the Short was crowned king of the Franks. And the Carolingian dynasty reached its peak in 800 CE or AD with the crowning of Charlemagne as the first emperor of Rome in the West in over 3 centuries. And that makes sense because the Roman Empire out of Rome, Italy, lost their power in 476 AD. That's when they lost their power. So they didn't hear the words Roman Empire didn't come up anymore until 3 centuries later. Then the papacy used these kings of other nations to become their strong arm and the dynasty. And the ones that most likely probably was more obedient, more following through. I didn't see that anywhere, but I'm just thinking they were crowned Holy Roman Empire. They're king of France, but he's called the Holy Roman Empire emperor. That's because the papacy was using them as a strong arm. They followed this church. They followed the papacy. Now we have learned in the past that names can change, but the subject remains the same. The little horn of Daniel 7 changes to the sea beast of Revelation 13, again based on 7:11 of Daniel. The seventh king, the seventh head, in verses 10 and 11, is the devil in Revelation chapter 17. Who is the scarlet-colored beast of verse 3, which this beast has 7 heads and 10 horns. It is the devil who is the 8th and is of the 7 and goes into perdition in Revelation 20. The papacy cannot be both the woman and the beast. These are 2 separate entities. whereby the woman represents the apostate church, following the ways of Babylonia. That's the reason why it's called Mystery Babylon. With its leader, the Pope, and the 10 horns must represent the state. Now must represent the state. We're in 17 now, which we would dive into later before the end of chapter 17. We'll dive into that later. See, this Revelation 17 is a very interesting chapter. Revelation 20 uses the same names identified in Revelation 16. The dragon or the devil, the beast represent the papacy, and the false prophet, the apostate state, which means a nation of territory considered as an organized political community under one government, apostate state. The dragon, the beast, the false prophet are the same names used to identify the wicked entities during the 7 last plagues before Yahushua's second appearance, and the wicked entities that will be cast into the lake of the fire, the end. That will be the end eventually. And we learn, and we'll learn again when you get to chapter 20. There's like 3 phases to that death in chapter 20, but that'll be explained when we get to chapter 20. So going to the next slide here. So I'm bringing this back up again, this chart. It is important to realize the period of 42 months appeared twice in the New Testament in the book of Revelation on your right side. It appears in Revelation 11:2 and Revelation 13:5. This time frame is significant because many have applied these times to prophetic time of 1260 years, which would take 1798 AD, which was the end of papal dominance in the Dark Ages, then add 1260 years to it, would put us at 3058 AD, which I think none of us believe this world has another 1,000 years left. I don't think anybody believes that. I don't think anybody believes that. So that's the problem. So when the context of these 2 chapters, somebody say something? Okay. When the context of these 2 chapters, basically 11 and 12 we're talking about, 11, 13, I'm sorry. When the context of these 2 chapters is read and studied, it becomes clear the setting for this period is future to us, and the time is literal, 42 months, 3.5 years, instead of prophetic. And that includes Revelation 13:5. Because if you think about it, chapter 13, 1 and 2 happens before verse 3. And verse 3 says that the beast's wound was healed. And then he got his power from the dragon. So he was healed, which means he was himself way before in verse 1 and 2. Now he's healed. And then in verse 5, it tells us it's a 42-month period. That's not another 1,260 years. That's just another literal 42 months or 3.5 years or 1,260 literal days. That's what that is. So going to belong to the heads, the horns, the lower left side. When we read and study Daniel 7, Revelation 12, 13, and 17, we will discover that the heads and horns are only attached to 2 entities, and that is the dragon, the devil, and the sea beast, the papacy, which is very interesting because even though they show the 7 heads and the 10 horns attached to these 2 entities, it is the very first entity with the dragon in chapter 12 that actually gave power to the second one, which was the sea beast. And the sea beast got his power from the dragon, again, Revelation 13, 2 and 4. So the main subjects, as mentioned earlier, is church and state. Bringing these 2 together spells out disaster as proven during the Dark Ages. According to Google, The term Dark Ages referred to a period in Europe history, roughly from 5 to 10 century, they say, but we know scriptures is 538 to 1798. Following the fall of the Western Roman Empire, which was in 476 AD, 476. So I'd just like to include that this time frame extends not from just the 5th to the 10th. It includes from the 6th century to the 18th. 18th is below that, 5th is below that. So 538 to 1790. And people were persecuted because they went against the Roman Catholic Church. Thus, this definitely identifies this period as dark because the light was trying to be extinguished. But the people of Yah, by this evil beast power of Revelation 13, 1 and 2. So in Daniel 7, we do not read about religious power until we get to Revelation 13. We see this little horn come up. We see that it does speak great things against the Most High. But you don't start to seeing those words like worship and all that kind of stuff until you get to 13. That's why I mentioned this yesterday. That's when you start to really seeing it. So the word Yah was not put forth to other nations as it should have. The Jews were a rebellious people, and because of their disobedience, idol worshiping, and out rejecting Yah, we find the Jewish nation, or the Jews, chosen by Yah, taken captive by the Babylonians, which was already prophesied by Jeremiah in chapter 25 of Jeremiah, verse 9 and 11. You all can go back and look at it. But Yah only allows the devil to do so much, just as in Job's case. So the same applies here. Yah only allows the devil to do so much to do at that time, dealing with the children of Israel and Judah. Only a certain amount of, he only let go a certain amount of time. Remember, the papacy was not ruling until 538. Therefore, if the heads started their rule before the papacy ruled, thus they had to be attached to the dragon. But the horns would get power for an hour. This is in Revelation 17. So let me go back. The papacy was not ruling until 538. So in Revelation 13, the heads, they had to already, in order to get to a point where you rule, just like anything, in order to get to a point when you rule, you have to have an origin. You have to start working your way up to that. Just like a child is not a teenager until they work themselves up to be a teenager. So the same thing applies here. So this papacy was not attached as a 7 heads and 10 horn type thing to the dragon. It's riding on top of the dragon. It's riding on top of it. It's sitting on top of it, letting it direct its path. Normally when someone get on a horse, they kind of, with the bit, they direct the horse whichever way it's going. Here, we know that the dragon is doing the directing because it already tells us that the dragon gave power to the papacy, to the woman. The horse don't have the power with the person riding on it. The man or the woman that's riding the horse has the power or directing the horse where to go. Here, the horse is directing the woman where to go, because we know from chapter 13 that chapter 13 tells us that the dragon gave him the power. And if the dragon gave him the power, then that means the dragon is the beast that she is riding on. So both the horns, this is Revelation 17, but the horns will get power for an hour later, according to Revelation 17:12. But both the 7 heads and 10 horns are attached to the devil, unlike Revelation 13, 1 and 2, whereby the 7 heads and 10 horns are attached to the papacy. Both heads and horns, when identified, were state, civil, political nations belonging to the devil. Remember, Who you are attached to is who you are following. Look what Yahushua says in Matthew 6:24. Matthew 6:24 says, and then Luke 16:13 says something similar. But Matthew 6:24 says, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other.
Mm-hmm.
You can serve Yah or Mammon. What's that?
I was saying that just agreeing with you. He also told the Pharisees the same thing, that they were like their father, the devil.
Yes, he sure did. Yeah, he did. So the world ruling nations, and remember, Nebuchadnezzar, he had a dream. He had a dream, and he dreamed of those four world rulers with that head of gold, remember, and the arms of silver, and the belly of brass, and the legs of iron, and then the feet mixed with iron and clay, so that that stone that comes and break it all up in pieces is representation one day that Yah is coming to destroy it. That means after the Roman Empire, iron, it wasn't going to be any more of these nations like that ruled the world anymore. That's it. That was the last of it. Now what happened is, if you go to chapter 7, verse 7 of Daniel, you'll see that there was 10 horns that came out of Rome. Rome was the fourth beast, that dreadful and terrible beast. And then in verse 8, you see that 3 of those horns were done away, subdued by that little horn. But what's interesting is that in verse 7, it tells us that this beast was diverse than the other beasts previous to it, which makes sense because the diverseness, now we don't have a world ruler from the sense of a political state or a democracy type state. We don't have a state like that, or a political state, a state power system where it's ran by political people or state or civil. We don't have that anymore when we get to this next beast. Now, contained within that fourth beast was the little horn. And he was diverse, because what happened is he wound up taking some of the power of the civil and taking and adding in there his blasphemous ways, which Revelation 13 calls worship, even though we know the worship part is mentioned after, in verse 3, after he becomes the sea beast, as it's mentioned. I mean, he has to become the beast, recovering beast. Remember now, he's already the beast. He's just a recovering beast. He's got his power back. So when he was, Revelation 13, 1 and 2, while he was still the beast, he was a beast then, but he was contained within the Roman Empire beast, and he was diverse because he wasn't a political figure like Babylon and Greece and Rome, pagan Rome. Now he's got both. He's got political power, and he got the diversity because now he got civil power. And by bringing both those together, he's now forcing the mass to now worship him, not based on laws of the land, but based on laws of the church. That's where the difference come in at. The people that was being killed weren't people that were killing and stealing and doing all those things that obviously is against any law. They weren't doing that. What they were doing was going against the law of the church. And that's the reason why they were diverse. That's the reason why destruction came upon those who wouldn't bow down to it. That's where all this come in at. That's where it all comes in at. And then in chapter 7 and 13, starting with verse 3, moving forward, that is when the fifth beast come in. Why? Because now verse 3 says that when he was wounded, because remember, Berthier, the general of Napoleon, came in 1798 and took power away from the papacy, away from Pope Pius VI, brought him back to France, and he died a year later. But he took the power away from them. And I'm going to talk about France a little bit later on, too. I don't know if we do it today, but I'm going to talk about them a little bit as well. So here we got the papacy that's no longer be ruling anymore, 1798. They were wounded. But now it says eventually that the wound, in other words, their power taken away from them, they're going to recover that again. It's coming back again. So that's why the fifth beast now will be the sea beast. 13, 1 and 2 was all incorporated as part of the fourth beast. Now the fifth beast, and there is no more Roman Empire. Now it's the fifth beast. And then the sixth beast, which is going to be helping the fifth beast. So does everybody understand so far? I'm going to make sure we're all on the same page so far. I don't hear anybody say anything, which tell me you're probably okay, I guess.
So the sixth beast is the United States helping the papacy.
Right, giving image to the beast.
Okay, that it's coming to me.
Revelation 13:11 talks about that earth beast. Remember, it's the one that had the two horns like a lamb and spoke as a. That's the United States.
Right.
Further down, it talks about how they're going to give image to the beast. What the beast is talking about is the sea beast.
Right, but they all under the power of Satan, and that's when he pops up at the end, because he's not going to give them their glory.
Oh no!
Not going to give them his glory. He's the one that wants the glory.
If he wanted it in heaven, you know he wanted it down here.
Right.
He got kicked out of heaven for that reason. Just like he's going to be kicked. He's going to be kicked off this earth eventually.
Yes.
Kicked out of heaven, cast out of heaven, and then he's going to be cast out of this earth when he goes into that lake of fire. Cast out of heaven, then he's going to be cast out of this earth. But not at this time. This time in chapter 17 is just a woman and the apostate system. It's just a woman and a false prophet. It's just a woman that's being burned. And we'll get to that in chapter 17 when we get to it. So the world rulers, Babylon, Mede, Persia, Greece, all called by name. They were called by name. So we know for sure who they were, because Daniel chapter 7, verse 3 said that 4 great beasts came up out of the sea. But then when you go over to Daniel chapter 8, verse 20 and 21, it then tells you who the representation of the ram and the he-goats and the 4 goats, who they were. And they were in Mede, Persia, and Greece. It actually calls the names out here. Mede, Persia, and Greece. So we know that was the second and third rulers. And we know the first was Babylon, because in chapter 2, it tells you that thou art the head of gold. You are the one that's the leader. Speaking of Nebuchadnezzar. And that was of the nation of Babylon. So they were the first one. And then the Mede, Persia, then Greece. And we know Rome was the fourth one, pagan Rome, because they ruled during Yahushua time. And they're mentioned in the new covenant. So we know they was a rule. So those the 4 world rulers. And the scriptures Don't give another proper name entity political civil power anymore after Rome. That's it. After pagan Rome, there is no other one. Only one that's coming up is that diverse one. That one that's mixing civil and religion together and using its religious power to persecute people. That's what it's doing. So the four heads or leaders came out of the third world ruler nation in Greece. Just to give you examples of how heads can come out of the beast or how horns can come out of the beast. Same thing. Heads out of the beast or horns out of the beast. When you look at Daniel chapter 7, verse 6, I mentioned this, I think, yesterday, you'll see that it tells you that there was four great beasts, verse 3, that came out of the sea. And then verse 6 is that third beast, which was Greece. Four heads came out of it. And we mentioned who those four heads were. Heads mean leaders. It's leaders. They had power. And they just took control of part of the areas from which Greece ruled. It's just like if your dad has four sons and he dies and he has an inheritance of land, that land is divided into four parts. Only the land that he owns. Same thing with Greece. Only the land that he conquered was divided out amongst those four nations, which was Cassandra, Ptolemy, Seleucus, and Lysimachus. Those were the four generals. After many years, it narrowed down to those four generals because they had many generals, but they had so much fighting and battle and stuff going on till it came down to those four heads. So, when you look at heads, H7217, for example, it means chief. That's one of the definitions. It means chief. So Revelation 12:3 is obvious because it states in Revelation 12, the 7 heads and the 10 horns are attached to the devil, as I mentioned earlier. But if you notice, the heads are state, civil, and the horns are state as well, talking about the ones in Revelation chapter 12, verse 3, which mean the horns have changed in Revelation 13:1, which they did. They did change. The heads actually changed too. They both changed because while one, church and state, mixed all together in chapter 13 with the heads and horn, when you get to Revelation chapter 17, you got the church being represented by the woman sitting on top of the one that's carrying out these heads and these horns. It's telling us the leaders of the heads throughout who the devil has been, and it can't be nothing the devil anyway, because he's the one that's been around since Babylon, since the beginning of time, basically. So he can be the only one. It can't be anyone else. Like I said earlier, no one is held accountable for anybody else. The papacy wouldn't be held accountable for what pagan Rome did, or Greece, or Persia, or Babylon. That had to be the devil, because he's the one who's been the culprit all along, ever since the garden. So, going back to Daniel 7, verse 7 again, the text mentioned that this fourth beast is diverse, and that diversities appear on the scene during the fourth beast's rule. 10 horns came out of the fourth beast. We mentioned 4 heads coming out of the third beast. Now we got 10 horns coming out of the fourth beast. So heads and horns can come out of the beast, which is what it does. You got heads and horns coming out of the beast in Revelation 13, the sea beast. You got heads and horns coming out of Revelation 12 and Revelation 17, coming out of the scarlet colored beast. So we got examples of that right there in Daniel. It gives us a clue. So remember, this church and state uniting is against scriptural principles. They totally are against scriptural principles. Go to Matthew 22:18-21. Somebody read that for me.
Matthew 22:18.
18 through 21.
Okay, Matthew chapter 22, starting with 18. But Yahushua perceived their wickedness and said, why tempt ye me, ye hypocrites? Shew me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. And he said unto them, whose is this image and subscription? They say unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto Yah the things that are Yah's.
That's pretty clear to me that church and state is separate.
Yes.
Assembly and state is separate. When you bring those two together like they did in the Dark Ages, we're going to have problems. It's working its way there now.
Yep.
It's working its way down. So Revelation 12:3, heads and horns are the same as Revelation 17:3, heads and horns. Revelation 13:1 is also obvious because Revelation 13, the 7 heads and 10 horns are attached to the sea beast or papacy, as mentioned, and not the devil. So we talked about that. It's pretty obvious. So it's made clear from Revelation 13 that the 7 heads were the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church. And the 10 horns were the Holy Roman emperors that were crowned through the 10 dynasties during the papacy rule from 538 to 1798. But the 10 horns also changed over time from belonging to the papacy to under the devil. But if you notice, whether it's attached to the papacy or not, all the heads and horns throughout history really belong to the devil or attached to the devil, either by way of the papacy or itself. Revelation 17:4. Let's go to Revelation 17:4. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color. Beast. Now let me read that again. And the woman was arrayed in scarlet color, in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. The woman, which they call the Holy Saint, is the universal government of the Catholic Church. And I've mentioned to you all before that universal government, Uncle Gray I remember, when we was in the AME church, that we used to sit up there and recite the Apostle Creed. And at the time, we would say Roman Catholic Church, but then it changed and we started saying Universal Church. Well, that's the same thing. Name changes, ain't changing the subject matter. It's the same thing. I mean, but the trick, this is where the trickery is at. This is where the trickery is at. See, when names get changed, people don't know what those names change are. They just think it's something just to go on. They don't know it ties into something they already knew that wasn't right. So until they learn that the name change is something wrong, they continue in it. That's the trickery part. In other words, if I come to the conclusion that something is wrong, I'm not going to keep giving you the wrong thing so you can always defy it. I'll change up with something else, but it really means that other thing, though. But I'm listening to you because I'm just trying to deceive. And that's exactly what's happening with the papacy. And what I showed you guys yesterday dealing with the spiritualism, how names has changed, which the papacy had nothing to do with some of those names, but they have a lot to do with the ecumenical movement and some of these other things that's out
there. Yep, and that's a move of Satan right to a T.
Yeah, it is. Again, how could two walk together except they agree?
That's right.
So, the Holy See, as they call them, the universal government of the Catholic Church that operates from the Vatican City State, as it's called, a sovereign, independent territory. The Pope is the ruler of both Vatican City State and what he called the Holy See. So purple and scarlet color and decked with gold. Well, we know there's a lot of copycat stuff goes on out there. You know, the one thing I'm just going to say about this, you can see the picture. The picture speaks for itself. What color do you see missing out of there? Blue. You don't see blue. And the reason why you don't see blue, because Numbers 15, 37, 38 through 39 tells me that the blue was the fringes. It represented the coop fringes at the bottom of their robes, their garments, so that they can identify with the commandments back then. That was back then. But of course, now, according to Acts 21, 37, 39, what they used before on their fringes, it's in our hearts. We don't need no fringes. We don't need any of that kind. We don't need walk around here with no crosses on. We don't even, like somebody was telling me the other day, they wear a cross. No, they said they wasn't a cross. It was something else they told me that they wore because it reminded them to study. I say, well, I told her, I said, let me just say this to you. I told her, whenever we, I had to put it in the format of we, whenever we have to have something exterior to remind us to put something interior, we got a problem. There's a problem. If I got to wear a certain hat to remind me to study every day, that's a problem. If I got to wear a cross to remind me to pick up the scriptures, that's a problem. If I got to wear a bracelet to remind me to pray, that's a problem. That tells me, and I hate to say this like this, but I'm just going to tell you, be frank. That tells me y'all ain't on your mind that much. Because think about it. If your job is on your mind, you don't forget to wake up and go to it, do you?
That's right.
Every day. You don't forget to do things you want to do. If you really want to put Yah in your heart and do his will, you're going to remember to pray whenever you pray. You're going to remember to study whenever you study. You're going to do all. You ain't going to need anything exterior to help you with something interior. You ain't going to need that.
That's right.
I thought something's wrong. Something is wrong. I just left it like that. You got to carry something around and remind you. But see, again, society. Look this, all this stuff this guy he had. He has a ring on his finger. He's got look. And you can't see all the jewelry because a lot of times they put a lot of jewelry on. I didn't put a lot of jewelry on. I just showed you some of the jewelry stuff they had there. But I didn't show you any of the pictures where they actually wearing all that stuff. I mean, some of that they got it all in their miters, in their clothing. They got all that stuff in there. They stood there purple and red in the cup. And you see they got the cross with Yahushua. Supposedly Yahushua was still on the cross. So he ain't come off the cross.
Yep.
See? I see people wearing those kind of crosses. So I'm just saying, we got to stay in Yah's word. We don't need all that exterior when Yah tells us it's got to be interior. In your heart.
That's why we ask for him to take the stony heart and give us a heart of flesh.
Absolutely.
Because a stony heart can't nothing penetrate that heart. You need a heart of flesh where something can get in it.
Right. So I can see why they don't use blue. Because they don't follow the commandments. They got their own 10 commandments.
You think that cup he got is empty?
I have no idea. I have no idea if it's not. Because he was doing here. Like, I don't even know what he was doing. I don't know if they had some kind of mass. My first thought I want to say is he got something in it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. He ain't just holding no empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he looked like he can't wait to get into that cup.
I think it might be. You know, I've seen them, through videos and stuff. I've seen them drinking out of these cups before,
Oh yeah.
but he probably got something in there. I had something in there. He got it in there now. He gone now. Right now he is. I believe he's coming back. But just like the Witch of Endor, he ain't gonna be really him. This thing going to break loose eventually. It's coming. So, this apostate religious organization depicted in all her seductiveness and gaudily dressed and vulgarly bedecked stands forth in striking contrast with the bride of the Lamb. So it's the opposite of the bride of the Lamb, who John saw arrayed in fine linen, clean and white. So Yah's people was found in fine linen, clean and white, which is the direct opposite of what you see that they wearing. And then it says it's full of an abomination and filthiness of her fornication. Or we can say her unclean acts, even of filthiness, which is her fornication. The gold of the cup deceived men with respect to the nature of the content, like false doctrine, lies, going against one's conscience. The word cup, G4221, means the content thereof, a cup full, draught. Figuratively, a lot or fate, the development of events beyond a person's control, regarded as determined by supernatural power. All that is in that definition. Now you look at verse 5. Go to verse 5. Let's go to verse 5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon, the Great, the mother of harlots, an abomination of the earth. Abomination of the earth. Well, I talked about forehead before, because we talked about that. Excuse me. We talked about that in where was it at? Chapter chapter 13, was it? About forehead. And I've talked about it in some other places before too, but the character reflected by the name Babylon is the woman's considered choice. This may be implied by the fact that the name appeared in the forehead, just like in Revelation 13:16. Just like in Revelation 13:16. It's in their mind. People that's following the beast system, they're not just doing the acts of it. They're following it because that's what's in their mind and heart to follow. So it's a mind thing too. So rather a name stands written, it has been written there in the past and remain there. It was a name written. The name reflects the character. So Mystery Babylon reflects the character. And that's the reason why in a few seconds here, I'm going to go through Babylon. I have a whole lot of stuff Babylon. I can't do everything with Babylon. But I'm going to give you some things here about Babylon that I think is pertinent to help understand somewhat about this Babylon. Because we need to understand that to see why they are called Mystery Babylon. So the mystery, maybe the term Babylon is mentioned twice as fallen, and I mentioned about that before, is because literal ancient Babylon fell first. Now mystery or spiritual Babylon is going to fall second. The word is descriptive of the title, but not part of it. Hence, the appropriateness of the term mystical Babylon, the word mystery, from the Greek concordance G34 and 66, means a hidden or secret thing not obvious to the understanding. That kind of remind me with that apocrypha thing that Eric brings up when he said it means hidden books. Yeah, we don't want to deal with anything hidden.
That's right.
So, but understanding through the Kadesh, Ruach, have come forth, and the discerning of this mystery Babylon is clear. Although in one sense, mystery Babylon may be considered as representative of apostate religious systems throughout history, Babylon the Great in the book of Revelation also designates the united apostate religions at the close of the time, united with the woman. So in Revelation 17:18, mystical Babylon is called that great city. Babylon is, man, it calls that great city also in chapter 18, verse 18. It calls it a great city over there, so we know it's talking about Babylon, mystical Babylon. Babylon is referred to as great here in view of the fact that this chapter deals most particularly with Satan's great final effort to secure the allegiance of the human race through religion and state. Babylon the Great is the name by which Revelation refers to the great threefold religious reunion or union of the dragon, the papacy, and the false prophet, the earth beasts or the kings of the earth, all of them. He's got control over all that. The term Babylon refers to the organizations themselves and to their leaders, but not so much to the members or the inhabitants of the earth. Not so much as them, because those inhabitants, as been mentioned in chapter 13, those inhabitants are the ones that's going to be receiving the mark of the beast. So while Satan, through the use of the papacy, is going to be going after the leaders, of course, which he's done. He's going to be done already. Obviously, he's going to be going after the inhabitants. And the scriptures already tell us that, because it says that the world wondered after the beast. That's everybody. It says everybody that dwelled on the earth, with the exception of the remnant. You have to understand there's going to be a remnant that's going to be left. So the latter was referred to as many waters. You know, there's in Revelation 17:15, you see it talks about many waters. So, and as the inhabitants of the earth. Inhabitants, that's everybody on the earth. That's the people on the earth. So now what I want to do is in Revelation 13, the very last verse, 18, it talked about that number of the man. His number is 603 scores and six. And I've mentioned on numerous occasions that number is not some arbitrary number. It's just not just a number like y'all say, okay, I think I just used 666. So I just used 535. No. That number has significance to it. The number 666 has significance to it. So I want to go through you all with some of that significance that it has, which is very important. So, looking at this, I'm not going to read this whole slide, but I'm going to just give you the logistics of it. Point being, we're going to dig into this mystery Babylon so we can get a better perspective of what we're dealing with in this verse 5 in chapter 17. The papacy, as we discovered in Revelation 13:1, is the sea beast. He wore mitre in the past that was inscribed with the words, the title of the Pope in Rome, Vicarius Filiodeus. Vicarius Filiodeus is Latin for Vicar of the Son of God. That's what it stands for in Latin. It should also be noted that the Babylonian worship system consisted of 36 gods. When we add the numerical value in Roman numerals, the letters add up to 666. So when you take one all the way to 36 as you see on the slide and add it all up, the total is 666. That's not by chance. That is not by chance. Look at this. Still talking about this 666. It has already been mentioned about the sum of the numbers. The sum of 1 and 36 is 666. And this represented the 36 supreme gods recognized by the Babylonian people, which were the numbers of the sun, the moon, and the stars. The sun was the highest god, the moon was the next one, and then the stars. They all had names. They were worshiping other gods. Now, the Greek word Latinos meaning the Latin kingdom. This is because Kabbalistically or numerologically, Latinos devolves, which means to pass on, to 666. When you spell the word Latinos out, the L is 30, the A is 1, the T is 300 in Greek, the E is 5, the I is 10, the N is 50, 0 is 70, S is 200. When you add it all up, you come up with 666. Again, the association of Latinos with 666 was first suggested by Irenaeus during the 2nd century, 130 to 202, who proposed in his Against Heresy that it might be the name of the 4th kingdom in Daniel 7:7. He was right. The papacy developed in that 4th kingdom. Well, let me say this. There's a key verse that really, really opens our minds up to literal Babylon. I want you to go over to Jeremiah 51, verse 7. Jeremiah 51, verse 7. Look what it says. Babylon has been a golden cup. Here's the cup in the Lord's hand, in Yahuwah's hand, that made all the earth drunken. There you go, earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine. Of her wine. Therefore, the nations are mad. I told you, mentioned yesterday, that word mad means to be boastful, be proud, praise. They enjoy what they did, having the power they had, the Babylonians. You remember, like you take Nebuchadnezzar. Remember when he went out onto the balcony and looked out and said, look at this, look at what I done. Babylon, look what I done. And as the words was coming out of his mouth, Yah took the kingdom away from him. And that's when he went out there and lived with the animals for 7 years. And then he came back and he recognized who was the King of Kings. And then in verse 8 it says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. Well, she ain't gonna, literal Babylon, it wasn't healed, it fell in 1st AD. But mystical Babylon, it came back as a mystical Babylon, which carried the same ways in this verse. Some of these things in this verses carry some of the same wording you find in Revelation 17 that we just got through reading. The golden cup, the earth drunken, the nation drunken with the wine, Babylon being boastful, Babylon's fallen, Babylon destroyed. So all these things we see in 17. So you can see why it's called mystical Babylon, because it has ways exactly like Babylon. Exactly like Babylon. When you go over to Psalm 24, verse 1, Psalms 24, verse 1. Psalms 24, verse 1.
The earth is Yahuwah's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell in it.
That's who this world, that's who this earth belongs to. So when in Revelation 13, where it says everybody in the earth worship the beast. Well, this earth ain't the beast. This earth is Yah. We all should be honoring him, but we don't, of course. People then took sides. The wrong side at that, many.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a shame that from that standpoint. Then I want you to look at something else here. Look at this. The ancient Greek. When you look at the ancient Greek for the word, the Latin kingdom, and you break the words down in the Greek, those words, Halatim Balasilia, when you break those words down to their Greek numerical value, 666. The ancient Greek for Italian church is Italica Ecclesia. And you notice I got strong references in here. So you got Italica Ecclesia. When you break that down, which is the Italian church, 666. That word means what the other one meant, a royal power, kingship, dominion, and rule. This one means a gathering of citizens called out from their homes into some public place and assembly religious congregation. That's the Italian church, Church of Rome. And look at this one. And in the ancient Greek, the word apostate or apostates with an S from G5516. When you add it up, person who renounces a religion or political belief or principle, the renouncing the doctrine of Yahushua. So you got a power, a Latin kingdom, a church that's apostate. All three of those add up to 666. Not by chance. It is absolutely not by chance. You know, the literal Babylon has served as a mechanism for the early days of Nimrod and has spread its poison on earth and has been an example for nations to follow even until this day. Satan disguises his work through people such as Nimrod, who was given the name of Saturn, signifying the hidden God. There we go back to hidden. It has been well written and documented that the word Satan also represents the word Saturn in the Babylonian custom or culture. So I say to you today, Revelation 17 is reflecting on the hidden dragon. Satan himself, the scarlet colored beast of Revelation 17. That Saturn, that hidden God, the hidden dragon, Satan. That's what we're talking about. Thus, Nimrod was known as the god of the Chaldean mysteries. Both Saturn and mysteries are Chaldean words, and they correlate to each other or have a mutual relationship. As mysteries signifies the hidden system. Therefore, Saturn signifies the hidden God. The name Saturn is pronounced as Satur, S-A-T-U-R. But as is said in researching this, the Chaldeans, scholars, people who study the Babylonian culture and names and words, know that the language consists of 4 words. That Satur is really the word stir, the name stir, not S-A-T-U-R, but as T-U-R in the Chaldean language. The name stir contains exactly the apocalyptic number of 666. In the Chaldean language, the S is 60. The T is 400. The U is 6. And the R is 200, totaling 666. So both the Greek and the Roman gods were intermingled, and Saturn was the equivalent of the Greek god Cronus. As mentioned earlier, it does not matter the names used, it is still worshiping other gods. An abomination to Yah. Go over to Deuteronomy chapter 12. Somebody read verses 29 to 32.
Okay. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 29 to 32. When Yahuwah thy Yah shall cut off the nations from before thee, whither thou goest to possess them, and thou succeedest them, and dwellest in the land, take heed to thyself that thou be not snared by following them, after that they be destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. Thou shalt not do so unto Yahuwah thy Yah, forever abomination to Yahuwah, which he hateth, have they done unto their gods, for even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire to their gods. What thing soever I command you, observe to do it. Thou shalt not add thereto nor diminish from it.
Yah has not changed. We are not to worship other gods. He has not changed. They were not to do it. We're not to do it. So Saturn is Satan, no matter what mechanism is used to ultimately affect, goes back to the father of lies still. So here's some of the keys to the Mystery Babylon. Mystery Babylon is a corrupt church. Revelation 17:1, verse 15, and chapter 19, verse 2. Also look at Jeremiah 51:44. Mystery Babylon is a rich church. Revelation 17:4. And see the literal Babylon in Isaiah 14:4. Mystery Babylon is a large worldwide church. Revelation 17:1 and 2, and verse 15. Mystery Babylon is a church that revives Babylon's pagan teachings. That's Revelation 17:5. Mystery Babylon is the mother of harlots. Revelation 17:5. What's that? Okay. Mystery Babylon is a religious power dominating the civil power, just like he did in the Dark Ages. Mystery Babylon, a harlot, belief in immorality, purgatory. Mystery Babylon, the harlot, belief in image worship, Peter, the statue of Peter, of Mary, of Yahushua, and stuff like that. Mystery Babylon, harlot, believes in sun worship, Sunday. Mystery Babylon is the worldwide system today that is carried out and maintained a paganistic, selfish, idolatrized worship and controlling mechanism it inherited from literal Babylon, with his mother being a Roman Catholic Church headed by the Pope. But keep in mind, as mentioned earlier, Satan uses people to do his bidding. The papacy, along with his daughters, apostate religions, will consolidate to meet the expectations of Satan's desire to bring religion and political civil power together. So once again, he thinks he can claim dominance of this earth and use the people to eventually gather to fight against Yah Almighty, which is ridiculous and extremely deceitful. And the number 666 points to the one in Revelation 13 that will get the support of those earth beasts and the false prophet that will promote and cause many to make an image to him. So the papacy will help lead out the cause. He will help lead out the cause for Satan, who gave him power in Revelation 13, 2 and 4 to take full control when all conditions are in place. Not only will the man of sin, according to Second Thessalonians, I believe. According to Second Thessalonians, Second Thessalonians 2, 3 through 9. We read that the other day. We read part of that yesterday, actually. So you can see there in verse 3, let no in chapter and Second Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. So we already know who that is. And then when you go down to verse 9, even him who's coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. So that lets you know that we got Satan involved there, and we got that one that's a man of sin. Them two working together. That's what we got. That's what we have. And I want you guys to know that when Yahushua comes back, there will be somebody in office. There will be a pope in office. There will be some pope in office, whoever he be. I got an idea who it might be. I still believe that Francis is the one that's coming. But only time will tell. Time will tell. Because we got that example. There's a reason why that example with Samuel is in there. There's a reason why that's in there. I think if that happens that way, of course, that wouldn't be new with it because it already happened before. Raising something up that wasn't real and appearing before. He's talking to him like he's something real. Talking about Saul. He's talking to the witchman. He's talking to this demon that's looking like Samuel. And I can see that in the last days happening. Not only with just Pope Francis, there's going to be many people walk. It says devils are going to be inhabiting in this earth. Don't tell them what they're going to be doing. It's going to be a mess, guys. This man of sin will be revealed, but the true culprit, the hidden dragon, Satan, will be in complete control of this fiasco, which it has been Satan all along that's perpetuated these plots and deceptions throughout history to show and be the dominant leader of this earth over Yah. But this so-called ruling is only for a short space. Only for a short space. It ain't gonna be long. Only for a short space. But he will reveal himself, according to 2 Corinthians 11, 13, 15, before it is over. And afterwards, he will be in the bottomless pit. After that 1,000 years, he'll be thrown into that. Well, he'll be in that bottomless pit for 1,000 years. But the beast and the false prophet will be cast into the lake of fire with him. So you got the ones that, and that's going to be talked about again when we do chapter 20. So I ain't going to really go into it since it's already going to be talked about, those three different situations that's going to be happening there dealing with the wicked. So here's just an example. It's very small format example of Protestant Reformation that really came out of Catholicism. So we have heard that the word Protestantism, this word Protestantism is a form of what they consider Christianity that originated with the 16th century Reformation. a movement against what his followers perceived to be errors in the Catholic Church. It was in 1517 that the man Martin Luther started the Protestant Reformation movement. And strongly disputing the claim that freedom from Yah's punishment of sin could be purchased with money, he confronted indulgent salesman Johann Tetzel with his 95 Theses in 1517. His refusal to retract all of his writings at the demand of Pope Leo X in 1520 and the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V at the Diet of Worms. The Edict of Worms was a decree issued not by Pope Leo X, but it was issued by the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, banning the writings of the Martin Luther and labeling him as a heretic and enemy of the state in 1521. That's dynasty, Holy Roman Emperor. So the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V belonged to the House of Habsburg dynasty, the one I mentioned when I gave you the list of names. He also, that specific one, also became king of Spain. He was the king of Spain too. So the papacy had used other powers to do its work. Luther taught that salvation is not earned by good deeds, but received only as the free gift of God's grace through faith, Ephesians 2:8, as a redeemer for sin. And then, we kind of know the history, at least I think most people do, trying the history of Martin Luther and his nailing the 95 Theses on the Wittenberg Church, the wall of Wittenberg Church, on the door of it. And 40% of that thesis was dealing with indulgences. So he was totally against that. And of course, they went against him. So what you see here, you see how the Adventists, they show the Adventists coming out of Methodists coming out of Anglican, Pietism coming out of Lutheranism. The Congregationalists is a combination of Anglicans and Presbyterians. And then you had Reformed churches. Then you had the Holiness Church, or the Holiness movement, coming out of the Methodists. And then you have Pentecostalism coming out of holiness. And it goes on and on and on. You got the Baptists coming out of the Puritan or Separatists, which came out of the Anglicans. So you got all these different groups, and you got way more than this now. Not even close. You got thousands of different groups now, religious groups. They're forming all the time. So,
and you get to pick whichever one that fits you.
Well, that's basically what they do.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I remember I worked with a guy years ago, and he told me he was Catholic because he still get to drink.
So he based his belief on what's going to make him feel good, not on what's true.
Oh yeah. Because he also said, Jim, that and the priests be drinking.
Oh yeah. So he figures, all right, they drinking.
Oh yeah. That's why he loved to drink.
Boy, I tell you, man, it's and that's another reason why you see how people are drunk. Drunk, it means idolatrous worship and false doctrine and stuff, but they actually literally drinking too. So
yeah.
So over time, from then to now, way back in the Dark Ages to now, we continue to see a shift from the movement of religious differences between Protestant churches and Catholics in the Dark Ages to the uniformity of Catholic and Protestantism, conforming to non-biblical standards and becoming united through ecumenicalism, which will eventually lead to disaster. The denominational religious names or organizations will have no importance when this world is ruled for a short space by the seven-headed, seven king, the devil. These religious organizations that came out of Catholicism, not the 10 horns, will become as one with the dragon. But they will eventually, through ecumenicalism, become part of the papacy, which is the religious side of the control of the devil has implemented. The devil is moving toward a one world religious church as well as a one world government state, just like it was in the days of Babylon and in chapter 11 of Genesis, when they tried to build the Tower of Babel. So it's all gonna come to a head. They're working its way up. This is just more of a breakdown of just showing. I was just trying to show you a pictorial view, and we actually can, if you can see the chart, okay. It might be hard for some of you on the phone, but literally all I'm doing here is showing the seven heads: the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh head. But out of the fifth head, I'm showing the seven heads, which is the hierarchical system of the papacy, and then the 10 horns, which are the dynasties. But also off of that, going over, see, now that's Revelation 13, 1 and 2, basically. Now going over to the right side, coming out of that little horn, you have these churches that came out of them. That's the harlot that came out of them. Luther, these actually came out. And those are the dates. Protestant movement out of the little horn. Lutheranism, Anabaptist, Anglicanism, Reformed churches, Presbyterians, Congregationalists, Baptist churches, Puritan separatists, Pietism, Methodism. All those are the years that they came out. And all that was during the time of the Protestant Reformation. And if you notice, to the right of there, I showed churches again. Some of them the same churches, some of them have name changes, some of them just total different names. Like, for instance, I don't see things today about pietism, but you got other things. Like you got the World Evangelical Alliance now. You got the charismatic stuff that you didn't have way back then. You got non-denominational. In other words, I put that on there so you can see how things are changing. Now, one thing I didn't add in, because someone would say, well, what about the Buddhists and what about the Taoists and all of them? The scripture says the world wondered after them. So that tells me at some point that all of them are going to serve the beast, one way or the other. I'm talking about China, I'm talking about India, I'm talking about Iran, I'm talking about Iraq, I'm talking about Korea, I'm talking about all of them. North Korea, I'm talking about all of them. It said the world, and I'm going to believe what the scriptures say. In our view, we may not see how in the world it's going to come together, because you already know the conflict between these nations. But if the scriptures say it's going to happen, it's done. It's done. But these are the harlots that came out of it, the Catholic Church. So that's why I'm just showing this specific chart right here. That's why I wanted you all to see this, that this is the abominations of the earth. And again, what the abomination of the earth is the unclean acts, the filthiness, which is inner fornication, the gold of the cup deceive men with respect to the nature of the content in it, like false doctrines, lies, going against one's conscience. Also abomination. And you know, abomination is G946, means detestation, especially idolatry. Idolatry is an abomination and many other abominations. That golden cup holds what the inhabitants of the earth believe to be something good. They think it's something good. We read there in Jeremiah 5:7 states that they are mad, which means they are praising and both they're pleased. They're pleased with it. Where the content of the cup represents the abomination of the earth. It looks appealing on the outside of the cup as gold, but the content of the cup is the abomination of the earth. Last verse, I thought we were going to hit 5, we're going to go to 6, and it might be just a little bit of 6. Well, we might really do the whole 6 here, get through 6. Yeah. Let's do 6. 6 is the last one. Revelation 17, verse 6. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs and of Yahushua. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So literally continuing in the state of intoxication. Drunken, that's what it means. In a general sense, Babylon may be said to be drunken with the blood of the martyrs of all ages. Revelation 18:24. But in a more immediate sense, with that of the martyr and prospective martyrs in the closing of these scenes of earth history. He's only held accountable for the things he's done, which has been a lot. Done a lot. Yah holds Mystery Babylon accountable for the blood of those whose death she has decreed and martyred through her persecution. Babylon is utterly intoxicated with her past success at persecuting the saints, and with the prospect that soon she will have the satisfaction of completing the gory task, but completely under the leadership of the dragon. The saints, G40, those are the Kadesh holy ones, most Kadesh holy ones. Acts 9:13 and Romans 1:7. And then, of course, with the blood, that is with the blood, the martyrs. The Greek concordance word G3144 means literally a witness. Those martyrs were witnesses for Yahushua, but also as a witness to the detestation and the abomination and the filthiness of the sea beast. And then it says in that verse of Yahushua. And that probably means who bore witness concerning Yahushua, first by their words and then by their martyrdom. They had been slain because they persisted in witnessing Yahushua and have been loyal to his name at the cost of their lives. And then it says, when I saw her. It is not clear whether this referred to all that John had seen in verses 3-6 or only to her conduct in verse 6, being the climax of her criminal career. The angel replies to John's amazement, though, in verse 7, may imply the first one, of which is verse 3-6, he might be talking about. Because in verse 7, for example, it references other wording and other verses like the 7 heads and the 10 horns, which is in verse 3. Therefore, in verse 7, the angel reply to John's amazement most likely implies to the entire witnessing in the vision John had of this woman that goes back to verse 3. And then it says, I wonder with great admiration. The end. Literally, he was amazed. The angel had called John to witness the sentence to be pronounced on Babylon, a religious prostitute. And the apostle probably expected to see a picture of complete ruin and degradation. But I think he may have. But we'll talk about that another time. But instead, he sees a woman garbed in costly attire in a state of intoxication and sitting upon a fearful beast. An angel had already told John something about the evil woman way back in Revelation 14:8 and 16:18 and 19. But now he is given a more complete account of her crimes. What John sees filled him with utter astonishment, far beyond anything he expresses himself in Revelation or in the Revelation. The mystical Babylon crimes as set forth in the angel indictment may be enumerated a number of things as follows in Revelation 18:4. You know, come out of her, my people. But there was seduction going on by seducing the kings of the earth into illicit reunion with her in order to follow her own sinister design. This is some of the things, some of the indictments against her. Oppressive despotism, which is the exercise of absolute power and using it in cruelty and being oppressive. So that is shown by her sitting upon many waters, the inhabitants, and oppressing the people of the earth. Revelation 17:1. The third thing that we talk about, Mystery Babylon crime, contributing to human delinquency by making the people of the earth, except for the saints, drunk with the wine of her political policy, thus causing them to become her accomplices in her evil plot. Revelation 17:2. But her fornication, she did corrupt the earth. Revelation 19:2. She corrupted the earth. She corrupted it. If you want to know, if you go to Revelation 19:2, for example, it says, "For true and righteous are her judgments, for he hath judged the great whore, which did corrupt the earth with her fornication, and have avenged the blood of his servants at her hand." And last but not least, two more. The fourth one, this is based on the crimes of mystical Babylon. These are her crimes. Her drunkenness by being drunken with the blood of the saints who have offended her by refusing to drink of her evil potion of air or to submit to her ambitions to rule the earth. Revelation 17:6. And the last one, murder and attempted murder by plotting the murder of Hamashiach's bride, the woman of Revelation 12:17, the true woman. That is another means, because you're going to put out a decree to want to kill him, but that's not going to happen. And also all the ones that he has murdered already. So there's murder and there's going to be attempted murder. So that's where we at. That's all for today. And tomorrow, I've already sent the link out. That's why I wanted to do it early before I forgot. I sent the link out already. So you guys should have the link. And tomorrow will be Revelation 17, part 3. It's part 3. So if you guys don't have any questions or any comments or anything like that, then we can close out with prayer. Okay. So let's close out. Close out with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we come before you again. Thank you so much, God, for your blessings and for your grace and your mercy. Thank you for this evening that we're allowed to be on and to discuss your word that you have given to us. We ask you to be with each and last one of us. Help us to be able to discern and understand your word clearly so that as these days come by, that we're prepared, Lord, because we know that you've taught us and told us that you're coming. And you're coming soon, but at the same time, you don't want to come to us as a thief of the night. So you're asking us and telling us, be prepared, be ready. Be ye ready as I'm ready. That's what Yah said, be ye ready. So I'm praying that you would be with each and last one of us. Help us and strengthen us and guide us and give us the wisdom and knowledge, but above all, give us understanding and help us to love one another and love each other, love our family, love our friends, and love those who just love our neighbor. And above all, love you, Father. We thank you in your son's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim.
Thank
All
you. Good night.
Good night.
Everybody.
Good night, everybody. You all have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Well, thank you.